Hello and welcome to our latest Regcast. My name's Tim Phillips. Now, as you know, at the Reg we prefer real world to the fantasy world that some vendors like to talk about. And often this has been a case, you've told us, with the way in which some vendors talk about cloud technologies in particular. So we're pleased to be talking to Star today because they're guys that like to deal with the cloud practically and deal with business problems practically, rather than some abstract concepts that they're going to help you solve, but they're not necessarily going to help you solve your business problems. So with us today from Star is Grant Tanner. Grant, welcome.
Hi, Tim. How are you doing?
Not too bad. I hope you're doing well yourself. Grant, tell me a little bit about Star, because some people won't know who you are, and some people will assume that you are just like every other cloud company.
Hi, so my name's Grant Tanner, Business Development Director, sit on the operational board of Star. Star is a business that's been going in the UK for 16 years. Its target market is around the mid-market up to some of the larger organisations in the UK. Effectively, we have leveraged cloud solutions to provide some solutions around some key verticals, really taking almost Star as a case study in the trials and tribulations we've gone through to enter that market. And you could probably say that we've been in this market for about 3 and a bit years. Our strategy is really to create solutions end-to-end. We're still quite a smallish organisation. We operate around £50 million turnover, but we have a large ecosystem that allows us to pull on that specialist skill set for some key verticals of which we're going to talk to a little bit today. What I would view Star as, though, for those that are listening, is almost we are a case study of how to develop cloud services yourself. So that's what I would probably tend to look at as Star, and say, actually, how has Star done this? And this is something that either we could do as an organisation, or we could probably leave us some of our learning. So hopefully, Tim, you're asking me a few challenging questions, and I might have some answers for you.
Well, I really hope you will. And I mean, this is very important because a lot of vendors talk about cloud as if it's just a single solution to a single problem. The cloud is just like a big bag of computers, and you can rent some of that. But I know in our first segment today we're talking about retail and the problems for retailers of adapting to new technology. This is not really the way that retailers think about IT, is it? And this is certainly not how they think about their business problems. You've provided us with this slide, Grant, showing how changing consumer habits have made it a lot more complicated for retailers to deal with their business problems at the moment.
Absolutely, and I guess one sort of caveat I put around Star is that in order for us to deliver these services, we do have to run some very complex solutions at our back office. So we do have data centres, UK networking, storage, etc. We're very close to our retail customers, managing a couple of the larger ones, and the thing about retailers today is how they're moving closer to the customer, or the customer is moving closer to them. And I guess a great example of that is the rise of things like social media, smartphones and devices that make the ease of retailing so much easier. So this has gone a little bit into the sort of new world now. This isn't so much just web and walk, it's web and web. You know, you're not walking into the stores. Did you like that, Tim? The web and web.
There was a little chuckle. It's sort of web and walk and sit down and watch and do and phone and everything, and a lot of things like this. Now, traditionally, retail technology has been founded on several very large monolithic systems that tend to stay in place for quite a long time, don't they? So I guess this as well, Grant, makes it uncomfortable to suddenly have all these new channels to the customer.
Absolutely, and I think the retailers that we work with are trying to develop their own platform as a service within their own estates. And Star sometimes provides that end-to-end. Sometimes we're just providing the infrastructure as a service, perhaps based on a virtual compute infrastructure to fulfill one of the categories on that slide deck. So, we are seeing a massive rise in, obviously, the use of devices in smartphones and how those apps are being deployed. So we find ourselves being pulled into different areas away from our core business of infrastructure to start working with, mobile operators, app developers, social media type companies, as really the role of retailers are changing. We don't operate so much in the FMCG space of retail, and again, we're seeing that change now to more of that sort of, coffee culture type, retailing where you're going to go in and sit in Starbucks for the afternoon, order your shopping on your iPad, and then someone's going to walk around with a bag in front of you, so you don't have to leave your seat. We're not quite there yet, but in terms of actually helping other retailers manage big data, so I think that's one thing that comes across. These are monolithic systems managing millions of SKUs, which require big data infrastructures, i.e., SAP, SQL, Oracle, all of the usual suspects. So how do you get that into a distributed fashion that centralizes applications that then distributes them out to your customer, your store, to your housing manager, and all of the supply chain? And I think over the years, many people talk about the drawing together of these systems and sort of a centralization. I think with cloud, you're now seeing the reverse of that, where it's a centralization but a distribution, and so long as the centralization is secure, i.e. it's a private cloud infrastructure, it can actually bring a lot of innovation to you as a retailer. And speaking to CIOs that I do, innovation is through IT is the growth area for them, because they really haven't done it in the past.
Well, I'm looking at this slide now, Grant. You can see that 2 out of the 3 points here being not innovating and being slow to react. This is very often the accusation for retailers, but I know when we talk to them, they come back to us and say it's more important that if it isn't broken, don't try and fix it, because they have to do business every day. Now they have to do business 24 hours a day. So What we're talking about here now is evolving, but this isn't a rip your systems out thing that we're talking about with cloud, is it? This is going to be a pretty slow and secure evolution of what they're doing.
Absolutely. So we've created a model called Retail Hub, which we've taken to market. And the message there is that actually you've got some line of business applications that ultimately run your business. Now, typically in retail, that would be warehousing, distribution and billing, the whole supply chain piece. So what we would advocate is that you federate into those solutions. As a really good example, if you take, I know Thomas Pink quite well, having people that work there. Well, they have a pretty resilient data center in one of their warehouses, which runs their warehousing and distribution architecture. So there would be no point for them physically moving that into a cloud service. However, federating that through to stores online and ultimately tablet or smartphone is something they would consider doing. So they can leverage some of the cloud services to make that holistic approach to deliver the service back to their customers. So, it's not a one-size-fits-all. I know these things come up a lot in cloud. The legacy systems are really important because they're legacy for a reason. They've been around a long time. They're running your system. They're running your businesses. So handle with care. I think that there's been quite a lot of retailers burnt through high-end system integration that have taken way too long to move off of legacy systems to do something innovative, and really haven't got the return of investment for doing that.
Now, but also we know that retail is a seasonal business. Volumes go up and volumes go down, especially when we're talking about internet volumes.
Absolutely.
Again, is this something that cloud, it is obviously something that cloud can help with in a general sense, but retailers have special problems bursting to the cloud on this, surely, with highly vertical systems.
Yeah, so it's a brilliant point actually, Tim, and I think we've got some solutions around that, and the seasonality thing, and people going to lockdown as well around that, so they want to scale the systems but aren't allowed to in case the thing crashes. So I think you have to look at things like content distribution as an example of providing that from a cloud type infrastructure. So most of the large retailers adopt some form of content distribution. To hold things like catalog or rich content or adverts or whatever. because they want the pull through in terms of people web browsing, the speed and the experience to be quicker. So, you'll find people like Star are encompassing some of those type solutions. I mean, we use level 3 for that, to actually say, look, you can do your web infrastructure within the cloud in a data center residing in Star, but actually your rich content and to manage the peaks and troughs of people hitting your website can effectively be cached in the cloud by a smart piece of CDN technology. And I know that there are applications out there that do that as well, like Adobe, use an awful lot of those services. But that's a real life example that if you're building 5 years ago, you would have just built lots and lots of compute infrastructure around your web farm. Cloud now says, actually, I don't have to spend a load of money on compute, physical hardware in data centers. I actually just need somewhere for this content to live. So where could it live? And things like a CDN network, certainly for Star, give us that flexibility. And it's really becomes pay as you go, which ultimately means you're a cloud provider as opposed to a hosting provider.
Yes. Now, also another aspect of retail is that business goes on in a lot of locations, a lot of quite small locations sometimes, and locations where there isn't any readily available IT support. Does cloud help with that at all?
That's an interesting thing. So I think if you're talking about, if you're a high street retailer, and I must be honest, with someone like Star, we're probably more known for our high street retailing brands than our e-commerce our e-commerce brands. So again, it's not quite a cloud service, but actually centralizing some of that, where your large data, your web farms, your EPOS systems are actually in a central location where you can access it through cloud. Obviously, gives you some, it just reduces the cost of the maintenance fees and the support elements. But if you're an ASOS, and again we speak to them quite a bit, you're in a very different marketplace where actually everything for you is cloud, and you can spend most of your money on how you grow your business.
And a lot of people think that naturally, sort of, retail is a global business. Actually, a lot of retail is really extremely local, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think it's that thing of if you take a store, a store today is some stores are got to be careful here, not to tread on the PC route or the non-PC route, but you want.
Go on, you say it. You say what's on your mind.
What I'm saying is that if you've got young people going to work in retail that are used to using smartphones and their Apple Macs and Facebook and everything else, putting them in front of a green screen in your high street is not going to get the best performance out of them. Putting them in front of an iPad where they can drag and drop your order efficiently is something that would give them productivity and make use of the technology, and that's what we mean by innovation. I don't know if anyone's walked in a high street recently and walked into a Barclays where they've actually refitted out all of the Barclays banks now that no longer have that counter staff. They actually have the settees around, and someone will come up to you with an iPad, or similar brands are available, Tim, and go through your ISAs and go through the mortgage options with you online, on a touchscreen device, and that's vastly different from where they were a year ago. And of course, the delivery of most of that infrastructure, Wi-Fi, maybe some networking, is generally centralized, and I think that way your employees get a little bit closer to the customer. Certainly it's easier to train people because they already are using these devices. If you're fresh out of university, that's what you're used to doing. And of course the productivity increases as a result. And I think Barclays has made a leap of faith in changing their physical buildings to do that. And it's very much following the sort of Apple iStore approach. And of course customer service is enormous in that, and getting very good ratings of customer service, which if you are a big retailer, that's incredibly important because that would build brand loyalty.
How difficult is it for you to convince your retail customers that you know their business? Because I imagine that some people who are listening to this at the moment, who are in the retail business, they get pitched a lot by vendors. And in the second conversation, it turns out the vendors have absolutely not the slightest conception of what their working day is like. They just think retail is like any other business. So you must have that problem of establishing your own credibility.
Yes, we do, and I wouldn't shy away from saying we don't. But one thing we have done, and we're quite fortunate having been around so long, is just build on the provenance of the customers we had anyway. So, going back to that opening statement of, well, what did cloud mean for Star? It meant that we've had to reinvent ourselves to use some of those cloud technologies, which we now sell. We've now got the benefit of actually looking at some key verticals and building up specialists in those areas. So when I talk about content distribution networking, we have system architects that really understand that and work really closely with the retailers and the suppliers. And I think professional consultative salespeople or account management or service people really have to get under the skin of what these verticals are demanding of us. So as they move closer to their customer, the supplier must move closer to them as their customer. So I think the whole thing evolves jointly. And I think, if you look at some of the really big successful brands that are out there, and I will cite ASOS as one, the thing that ASOS has done is created a culture to move this forward. And now that's something that, is a big topic, but culturally, someone like Star is very in tune with its retailers, as it is in tune with some of its other verticals. And it's because we do customer advisory board sessions, we bring people in, we do lots of events, and those are really, we look at the business process down as opposed to the infrastructure up. And that's been a massive change that Star's had to go through over the last 3 to 4 years.
And it sounds like this is not really a business for a hands-off generic cloud company, because they're not really selling the things that retail customers need. So it's a different cloud model to the one that we're often being sold.
I think so, but we're keeping it real because we know we can't do all of the end-to-end without some key partners. So we work with we formed a thing called the UK Cloud Alliance, of which Star is the founder, and cheekily I head up, Tim, so there's a little bit of a flag wave there for myself.
This is actually for publicity for yourself, not just for Star.
Absolutely. But that allows us to look for that degree of specialism around about 16 categories, which they are technology-based categories. We're not talking about producing HR and payroll outsourcing. We're still talking about a business process fueled by IT services. But it does allow us to work with organizations like Moobaloo in the app space to develop apps around our retailers, to work with people like Pythagoras in the CRM space, which if you bolt these solutions together and we as a collective deliver them as a cloud service, pay as you go, that's got to be, that really does bring innovation, because the likelihood is that the larger telcos in the UK cannot do that. That they're too big and cumbersome to change. Whereas I think Star and its partner ecosystem just can deliver some of these things. Now, that really, again, it puts a little bit of power back into IT as well, because then IT can actually become the true system integrator. So back to what a retailer would want, retail has a place at the board in many of these organizations because the board are viewing IT as the only innovative solution to some of the challenges they have to get closer to customers.
Okay, now Grant, to wrap it up, just before you plug yourself anymore, because we've had enough of that now. But to wrap it up, if there's anyone in the retail business who's dismissed cloud before, said this is not for us, this is not how we run our business, what's the one thing that you could say to them that might make them reassess that?
So the key thing, and this is me paraphrasing from CIOs, it's innovation through IT. And what I mean by that is you've got to start viewing that your customer is going to transact with you very, very differently. And to transact differently, you need to have an innovative spirit within your business. So yes, you will still have to manage big data. Yes, you will still have to manage peaks and troughs in your retail spikes, run up to Christmas, run up to Valentine's Day, in your case, Tim, etc. But so I think the key thing, and I'm delighted that CIOs are using the word innovation. If you look at that slide deck that says multiple access points now to a customer base through IT, how are you going to do it? Because gone are the days of green screen EPOS systems that will fulfill the wide generation's desire to spend money with you. If you can't show that and make that a comfortable experience for somebody, they will walk to the shop next door.
Okay, good. So Grant Tanner, thank you very much. That's retail in the cloud, and that was Grant Tanner, not only an important man within Star, but an important man within the cloud in general. Grant, thank you for that, and I know that you've got some insights into a couple more vertical markets that we'll be dealing with in a separate Regcast segment. Thank you.